115 million years ago, across the humid floodplains of what would become North America, a predator moved with an unnerving agility. It was an animal engineered for a single brutal purpose: to tear open the flesh of its prey with one swift, decisive motion. Its primary weapon was not in its jaw, but on its foot. A single 12-centimeter talon, honed to a roseau onto the back of its quarry, drive that claw deep into the struggling body and begin to feed while its victim was still alive. This was Deinonychus, the terrible claw, a dinosaur that, in its discovery, would single-handedly rewrite the entire field of paleontology. For decades, our image of the dinosaur was one of sluggish, cold-blooded beasts, gargantuan, dim-witted lizards dragging their tails through primordial swamps. But the bones of Deinonychus told a different story. Here was an animal with a lightweight skeleton, long, powerful legs, and a rigid, horizontal tail acting as a perfect counterbalance. This was no lumbering reptile. This was a fast, active, and highly mobile hunter. The paleontologist who unearthed it, John Ostrom, proposed a radical theory: that Deinonychus may have been warm-blooded, more akin to a modern bird than a lizard. The suggestion ignited a firestorm of debate, a scientific revolution that continues to this day. Deinonychus became the poster child for a new era of understanding, transforming dinosaurs from slow-moving monsters into the dynamic, intelligent, and lethal creatures that now dominate our imagination. Without it, there would be no Jurassic Park, for the iconic velociraptors of the film were, in size, ferocity, and name, a direct homage to the terrible claw itself. But the story of its ascent from obscurity is as dramatic as its biology. It began in 1931 in the Badlands of Montana. The legendary fossil hunter Barnum Brown was excavating the skeleton of a Tenontosaurus, a large herbivore the size of a cow. Nearby, embedded in stubborn limestone, he noticed the scattered bones of a much smaller predator. Mistaking it for a diminutive relative, he gave it the working name Daptosaurus, the nimble lizard, and shipped the fossils to the American Museum of Natural History. There, for more than 30 years, the bones lay forgotten in a quiet storeroom, a revolution waiting in a drawer. It was not until the early 1960s that Brown, now an old man, showed the specimen to a young Yale University student named John Ostrom. Ostrom saw what Brown had missed. He recognized that these were not the bones of a typical dinosaur. This was something special. In 1964, he led his own expedition back to the same rock formation and unearthed more skeletons. When he laid them beside Brown's 30-year-old find, the truth was undeniable. In 1969, he published his monograph, officially christening the animal Deinonychus antiropus. The terrible claw had finally been given its name. It was a creature built for the kill. Reaching over 3 meters in length and weighing around 73 kilograms, it was the size of a large wolf, but infinitely more dangerous. Its skull, over 40 centimeters long, housed powerful jaws armed with 70 curved, serrated teeth, designed for ripping, not crushing. Its forelimbs, while unreined struggling prey in a terrifying embrace. The discovery of multiple skeletons around a single, much larger herbivore ignited a fierce debate. Was this evidence of a coordinated pack hunt, a lethal family unit, or simply a feeding frenzy? The bones remain silent on the matter. Deinonychus is more than a fossil. It is a testament to how a single discovery can shatter a century of dogma, forcing us to reimagine an entire lost world. It reminds us that the history written in stone is not always what it seems, and that the creatures of the deep past were not merely monsters, but complex, dynamic beings whose echoes still shape our understanding of life itself. The jaws were an instrument of lethal purpose, their design honed for the tearing of flesh. A vaulted palate created a narrow, almost delicate snout, yet this was a profound deception. The cheekbones, in stark contrast, flared wide, creating a skull that was paradoxically slender at the front, but broad at the eyes. This was the architecture of a precision hunter. It granted the creature, Deinonychus, a gift rare in the dinosaur world: true stereoscopic vision. It saw its world not as a flat tapestry, but in 3 living dimensions. From its perch, it could calculate the distance to its prey with unnerving accuracy, a gaze that measured life and death down to the final inch. Yet this fearsome predator was once an enigma, its true face hidden by the very process of its discovery. When the paleontologist John Ostrom first pieced together the shattered fragments of its skull, he was guided by the familiar forms of the past. He reconstructed it in the image of an allosaur, crowning it with broad triangular horns above the eyes. It was a compelling image, but it was a mistake, a ghost of another, larger predator haunting the bones of this new and terrible creature. Only later, with more evidence, would the reconstruction be corrected, revealing the animal. The forelimbs were long and powerful, ending in three-fingered hands. The first finger was the shortest, the second the longest, each tipped with a wickedly curved claw. But the true marvel of this animal's anatomy lay lower. The hind limbs were also three-toed, built for speed and agility, and there, on the second toe of each foot, was its signature weapon, the famous sickle claw. Up to 12 centimeters long, it was a thin, elegant, and exquisitely sharp blade of bone and keratin. This was not a tool for walking. In motion, the claw was held aloft, a mobile digit retracted from the ground. Deinonychus walked on its third and fourth toes alone, a posture that kept its primary weapon from ever touching the earth. It was a predator that cherished its tools, refusing to blunt their perfect lethal edge on the grit and stone of its world. For decades, this single feature fueled a fierce debate. How was this weapon used? Ostrom himself, the man who brought Deinonychus to the world, envisioned a dynamic, slashing attack. He imagined the creature leaping, kicking out with its powerful legs, and using the claw to rip open the soft underbelly of its prey, disemboweling it in a single devastating strike. Other scientists proposed different roles. Perhaps it was a climbing aid, a grappling hook to scale trees, or the flanks of much larger dinosaurs. Then, in the year 2005, the debate moved from the realm of theory to the rigor of experiment. Engineers constructed robotic legs, mechanical mimics of both Deinonychus and its cousin, Velociraptor. They armed these replicas with accurately shaped claws and unleashed them upon a pig carcass. The outcome was a revelation. The claws did not create deep, slashing wounds. Instead, they produced a series of small, deep punctures. The disembowelment theory, so popular in the public imagination, was bleeding out. The terrible claw was not a slasher. It did something else entirely. The answer, it turned out, was not in the past, but soaring in our skies today. In 2011, paleontologist Denver Fowler proposed a new, chilling hypothesis: raptor prey restraint. The method was not a swift kill, but a brutal and methodical process of subjugation. Deinonychus would leap onto the back of its prey, its weight acting as an anchor. In that instant, the sickle claws would plunge deep into the victim's flesh, not to tease feet. The prey was immobilized. And then, with the victim still alive and struggling, Deinonychus would begin to feed. Its powerful forelimbs, with their own grasping claws, would hold on tight, while its jaws went to work, tearing away strips of flesh. Death was not quick. It was a slow descent, brought on by shock, blood loss, and catastrophic organ failure. It is a horrifying image, yet it is a strategy mirrored with chilling precision by modern birds of prey. Hawks and eagles perform the very same act. They leap upon their quarry, sink their talons deep, use their body weight to pin it to the ground, and begin to eat it alive. Fowler discovered an astonishing convergence in anatomy. The foot structure of Deinonychus, with its enlarged second digit and similar range of grasping motion, is functionally identical to that of an accipitrid hawk. This was no coincidence. Every part of the animal's body was now locked into this single terrifying purpose. The long feathered arms, once thought to be for flight, were instead used as stabilizing wings, flapping to maintain balance atop a thrashing victim, a behavior known as mantling in modern birds. The long, rigid tail acted as a dynamic counterbalance. The jaws lacking the bone-crushing force of a tiskel, a technique seen today in Komodo dragons. The rarity of Deinonychus tooth marks on bone fossils confirms this. They were flesh-eaters, not bone crushers, their jaws designed for gripping and tearing, not pulverizing. From the stereoscopic eyes that first locked onto a target, to the claws that pinned it in its final moments, every element of Deinonychus was part of a sophisticated killing machine. It was not the frenzied slasher of movie screens, but something far more patient, more intimate, and arguably more terrible. It was a living link in an evolutionary chain, a creature that shows us the deep, dark ancestry of the birds in our own backyards, reminding us that nature's elegance is often born from the crucible of brutal efficiency. The anatomy of a killer is written in stone, a puzzle of bone and time. For decades, the forelimbs of Deinonychus, the terrible claw, were a subject of intense debate. Then a study in the year 2002 offered a definitive clue. The coracoid, a key bone in the shoulder girdle, told a story of grasping, of hands designed not for walking, but for seizing. Yet this was no simple avian motion. Deinonychus could not fold its arms neatly for engagement. The joints were stiff, the posture alien. Further analysis in 2006 refined this image, suggesting the creature could press an object to its chest, but perhaps only with a single powerful arm, leaving the other free. But science is a relentless conversation, and another study proposed a more terrifying possibility: a coordinated two-armed attack, a bear hug from the Cretaceous. This vision was later confirmed. The arms did not act independently, they were a synchronized pair. One would seize, the other would mirror the action, locking prey in a lethal embrace. The victim, trapped and immobilized, was held fast while the infamous sickle claws and serrated teeth went to their devastating work. This brutal lifestyle demanded an equally robust physique. A 2001 investigation sought the scars of battle, examining the creature's very bones for signs of stress. Across a collection of 43 bones from the forelimbs and 52 from the hind limbs, researchers hunted for fatigue fractures, the telltale signs of repeated violent strain. They found none. Only a single healed fracture on the second phalanx of a toe marred an otherwise pristine record. The arms of Deinonychus were not merely strong, they were magnificently over-engineered, built to withstand unimaginable forces. And yet, here lies a paradox. In the popular imagination, the dromaeosaurs are lightning-fast sprinters, a blur of tooth and claw. The paleontologist John Ostrom, who first unveiled Deinonychus to the world, initially shared this view, but his early descriptions were based on incomplete material, missing the crucial hind limbs. His estimates for the length of the femur were, it turned out, significantly exaggerated. When a more complete picture emerged from the rock, the truth was startlingly different. The key lies in a simple ratio: the length of the metatarsus, the bones of the midfoot, to the tibia, or shin bone. In Deinonychus, this ratio is 0.48. For comparison, Inu, champion of terrestrial speed, that ratio climbs to 0.95. The anatomical verdict was undeniable. Deinonychus was built for power, not for pursuit. It was significantly slower than its cinematic counterparts. The reason for this deliberate pace was forged into the very architecture of its foot, inextricably linked to its primary weapon. The short metatarsals, Ostrom later hypothesized, were a crucial adaptation. They provided a stable, powerful anchor, reducing the immense stress placed upon the foot's bones during an attack. When the sickle claw struck, it moved downward and backward in a single gut-wrenching arc. This was a biological compromise, a sacrifice of outright speed for the sake of a devastatingly effective, well-balanced strike. Fascinatingly, this trade-off changed over the animal's life. Younger individuals possessed a higher bone ratio, suggesting they were faster, more agile hunters than the adults. As Deinonychus, fossilized trackways, frozen moments from a lost world, lend credence to this vision of a measured predator. A 1981 study of tracks from the Gething Formation in British Columbia, believed to belong to Deinonychus, or a close relative, calculated a walking speed of just 10.1 kilometers per hour. A healthy human can easily run at 15 to 20. On an open plain, Deinonychus would not have caught you. But this creature did not hunt on an open plain. It was a creature of the shadows, an ambush predator. It would lie in wait amongst the dense Cretaceous undergrowth, its long, bony tail held rigid and parallel to the ground, a perfect counterbalance. This tail was no passive appendage. It was a dynamic rudder, allowing for astonishing agility and sudden changes in direction. The hunt was not a marathon, but a single explosive moment, a terrifying leap from concealment, a coordinated grasp, and a final fatal strike. And what of its appearance? While no direct feather impressions have ever been found for Deinonychus, the evidence from its family tree is overwhelming. Its more ancient relative, Raptor, was covered in a full plumage, possessing 4 wings for gliding between trees. Its closer cousin, the famed Velociraptor, bore distinct quill knobs on its ulna, irrefutable anchor points for large wing feathers. The verdict of biology is clear. Deinonychus was cloaked in feathers. Thus, the ghost in the rock slowly takes form, not as a scaly monster of fiction, but as a far more complex and formidable reality, a creature of profound strength, calculated power, and feathered majesty. Each new discovery, each re-examined bone, does not simply answer a question, but deepens the mystery, reminding us that the truth of the past is a story forever being rewritten in stone. For a time, there was only speculation, a ghost in the geological record, pieced together from fragments of bone and terror. But the silence of millennia can be broken by a single delicate discovery. In the year 2009, the Earth offered a revelation. A fossilized egg nestled between the forelimbs and belly ribs of a Deinonychus skeleton. The initial hypothesis was simple and brutal. This was its last meal, but the tableau frozen in stone told a different story. The bones were not scattered in the chaos of consumption, they formed a protective cage around the egg. It had not been eaten, it was being incubated. This creature, this fearsome predator, had perished in the most tender of acts, brooding its young. Further analysis in 2018 added a stroke of unexpected color to this monochrome world. The eggs, scientists determined, were not a drab uniform shade, the modern tinamou bird. This suggests open nests, exposed mantle of primitive feathers settling over its clutch, sharing the warmth of its own body in a ritual that has echoed through the ages. The individual found guarding its legacy was an adolescent, perhaps 13 or 14 years old, its own growth already beginning to slow. It was apparent long before it was fully grown, a testament to a life cycle that unfolded at a different pace than our own. This intimate portrait of parental care, however, only sharpens the central violent question that has haunted paleontologists for decades. Was this nurturing guardian a lone hunter or a member of a coordinated, intelligent pack? The evidence for the pack is compelling, written in the language of bone beds. Across North America, the teeth of Deinonychus eyeing more than a ton. A single raptor, however fearsome, would be no match for such a beast. The implication is clear. It took a group, a lethal ballet of claws and teeth, to bring down such colossal prey. A discovery from the Cloverleaf Formatii, the remains of 4 adult Deinonychus and 1 juvenile. It is a snapshot of a hunt gone wrong, a fatal confrontation where both predator and prey paid the ultimate price. In the Antlers Formation of Oklahoma, the story repeats. 6 Tenontosaurus skeletons of varying ages were unearthed with the incomplete skeleton of a Deinonychus and a profusion of its serrated teeth. The bones of the herbivores bear the unmistakable signature of their assault, the deep gouges and punctures of a raptor attack. These finds seem to speak unequivocally of a sophisticated social predator. A group would attack, overwhelming their massive quarry. Some might perish in the struggle, but the pack would endure, feasting on their hard-won prize. Yet this narrative is not without its challenges. A closer look at the evidence suggests a far more chaotic and sinister interpretation. Research into the behavior often gather at a carcass, but their assembly is not one of cooperation. It is a violent, opportunistic free-for-all, governed by size and aggression. Brinkman's analysis of the Deinonychus bone beds revealed a disturbing pattern. the raptor remains were overwhelmingly those of younger, smaller individuals. The missing parts of their skeletons hint at post-mortem cannibalism. Perhaps Deinonychus did not hunt together at all. Perhaps they were drawn, one by one, to the scent of a dead or dying Deinonychus. In the ensuing frenzy over the spoils, the larger, more powerful adults would have driven off, or killed and consumed, their smaller rivals. The scene was not a coordinated hunt, but a brutal hierarchy at a carrion feast. The modern Komodo dragon provides a stark parallel. The largest eat first, and any smaller dragon that dares to approach risks becoming part of the meal. But the debate does not end there. Fossil trackways have been discovered showing multiple Deinonychus moving together, their footprints marching in unison across ancient mudflats. This is direct evidence of group travel, of a social bond that existed outside the frenzy of a kill site. And if modern crocodiles can engage in cooperative hunting, why not their ancient cousins? A study from 2020 added a new layer of chemical complexity. By analyzing the carbon-13 isotopes in Deinonychus teeth of different ages, Joseph Fredrickson and his colleagues uncovered a distinct shift in diet. The chemical signatures in the teeth of young raptors were different from those. It doesn't disprove pack life, but it complicates it. It suggests a social structure where different age groups within the same clan did not share the same food. They may have lived together, moved together, but when it came to hunting, they may have been on their own. So we are left with a creature of profound contradictions. The tender parent shielding its vibrant egg from a hostile world. The ferocious killer capable of felling giants. A social animal, yet perhaps one driven by a brutal internal conflict. Each new discovery pulls back another layer, revealing not a simple monster, but a complex being, forever etched in stone, yet forever elusive. In the dappled light of a Cretaceous forest, a life began with a fragile hunger. The young Deinonychus, a fraction of its adult size, was a hunter of the shadows, pursuing small, fleeting prey through the undergrowth. For these juveniles, survival was a relentless education. Many would not graduate. The fossil record tells a stark story, littered with the remains of the young and inexperienced. They were the casualties of youthful ambition, taking on dangerous quarry without the wisdom of scars, their lives cut short in a moment of miscalculation. The adults, battle-hardened and cautious, had learned the grim arithmetic of survival. For those that survived this brutal apprenticeship, the next stage was assimilation into a larger, more ambiguous social structure. The evidence whispers conflicting tales. Did Deinonychus form organized packs to take down prey far larger than themselves? Perhaps. But if they did, it was not the intricate, cooperative society of an Ivor's Edge. They were collectives of convenience, tolerating each other's presence when a large carcass was available, even engaging in moments of temporary cooperation. But this was a tense alliance, always simmering with competition, ready to erupt into violent conflict over a single scrap of meat. Their stage was a world drenched in subtropical humidity. They moved through dense forests and across the edges of sun-scorched savannas, a landscape punctuated by innumerable small lakes and streams. Here, Deinonychus carved out its niche not as an apex predator, but as a mid-tier terror. It was not the largest carnivore of its time, but what it lacked in sheer size, it compensated for with a lethal combination of speed, agility, and devastating weaponry, making it a formidable threat to any animal of comparable size. And if their blood ran warm, as many paleontologists now believe, it may have unlocked a waruding over their nests. We can envision a shared parental duty, both adults fiercely guarding their clutch of pale blue eggs, using their feathered arms to provide warmth and shelter. Perhaps in the moments before mating, they engaged in elaborate courtship dances, mirroring the cranes of our own time. A flash of iridescent plumage, a series of powerful leaps, wings outstretched not for flight but for display, their calls echoing through the primeval forest. It was a demonstration of vitality, a promise of strong genes passed to the next generation. But the story of Deinonychus does not end with its extinction. It was resurrected in the late 20th century, not by genetic engineering, but by the power of fiction. In 1988, the paleo artist and researcher Gregory S. Paul published his seminal work, Predatory Dinosaurs of the World. In it, he controversially reclassified Deinonychus, folding it into the genus Velociraptor. The novelist Michael Crichton, researching his next book, absorbed this idea. Yet, in the alchemy of storytelling, he recognized that the name Velociraptor, the swift Caesar, was simply more evocative, more terrifying. When the story reached the screen, Steven Spielberg's creative team forged a hybrid. They sculpted a creature with the size, the proportions, and the fearsome skull structure of Deinonychus. But they christened it with the more marketable name. The iconic raptors of Jurassic Park, the intelligent door-opening monsters that haunted a generation's nightmares, were in fact Deinonychus in all but name. The real Velociraptor was a creature the size of a turkey, weighing perhaps 15 kilograms. Deinonychus was 3 times larger and 7 times heavier, a vastly more dangerous animal that, thanks to a trick of taxonomy and cinematic license, became an icon under a false identity. This cultural phenomenon obscured the scientific truth. We now know that its signature weapon, the sickle-shaped claw, was not a tool for disemboweling. It was a grappling hook, an anchor of flesh and bone. Deinonychus was not a marathon runner, but a master of the explosive ambush. It would leap upon its prey, its terrible claws plunging deep, pinning the struggling victim to the ground while it began to feed, often while its meal was still alive. We know it was a caring parent, incubating those striking blue eggs beneath a cloak of its own feathers. And yet the central question of its social life remains, a ghost in the fossil record. Did they hunt in coordinated packs? Did they merely gather at kills? Or was their behavior a fluid spectrum, shifting between solitude and congregation as circumstances demanded? The bones cannot give us a final answer. What is certain is that this single discovery fundamentally altered our perception of the past. Before Deinonychus was unearthed, dinosaurs were largely seen as sluggish, cold-blooded, dim-witted giants destined for extinction. This creature was the spark that ignited a revolution. It was dynamic, intelligent, and agile. It presented the radical possibility of warm-blooded, active animals with complex social lives, forever changing the field of paleontology. It is the terrible claw that ripped open not a belly, but our own ignorance, revealing a world more dynamic, more complex, and infinitely more fascinating than we had ever dared to imagine. Without this one creature, there would be no Jurassic Park. Our entire modern perception of the dinosaur as a swift, intelligent, and terrifyingly active animal would simply not exist. To confront a Deinonychus would be to face a nightmare given flesh. It was an animal defined by its weapons, a mouth filled with serrated teeth, and on each foot a terrible sickle-shaped claw. Its method was not one of a quick, merciful kill. Instead, it would leap upon its victim, sinking its claws deep to gain purchase, and begin the methodical process of eating its prey alive. Dromaeosaurs were patient predators. They could feed for a very long time. In its bones, we found not just a monster, but a key that unlocked a more dynamic and frightening vision of the ancient world.